excited. This is your final exam study guide for AP, United States Government and Politics, Semester 1. First off, a little bit of Unit 1, Foundations of American Democracy. You're looking at a faction and the idea of factions. Faction is a small group within a larger one, so a small group within politics. Washington was warning of factions in his farewell address. They talk about factions in Federalist 10. Factions, again, could cause gridlock when they're not working together in government. Your concept of federalism is very important. Again, two or more governments are exercising power and authority over different people or the same people in the same territory. Advantages: promotes unity, gets the government closer to people. Disadvantages: states sometimes become unequal, but again, this is the division of power between states and federal government. Block grants are a way that the federal government can give money to the state governments, and these are well liked by the state governments because they are broadened for a general purpose, so the states have more discretionary power. Your Articles of Confederation, what is it? It's the first official government of the United States, created after the Declaration of Independence. It was very inefficient and it failed. Again, it was only a league of friendship. It had a weak central government, no power to tax. Again, the makeup, they only had a unicameral Congress. They had no other branches. This led to the creation of the United States Constitution, which you have your three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial branches, with your checks and balances and separation of powers. Created after the failures of the Articles of the Constitutional Convention. It did then include the Bill of Rights because the Anti-Federalists wanted a Bill of Rights, and it has 7 articles. Your concurrent powers are powers a federal system of government share with the state governments. Now looking at a couple court cases when we're dealing with federalism. In the Mccall versus Maryland, the Bank of the United States is being taxed by Maryland because of competition. The Supreme Court declared only the federal government can tax a federal organization, so they used the supremacy clause of the Constitution there, strengthening the national government. Then the U.S. Lopez case was a gun issue at a school. A student was charged with a federal gun crime, but they said it had nothing to do with the Commerce Clause, so the federal government was stretching their powers, which gave more powers to the state. Separation of powers, again, is the idea of the division of government between branches. Each branch has their own list of powers. All right, when looking at the branches, Unit 2, approval ratings of presidents, you should know that they generally go down. The bully pulpit, we briefly touched this. It's a platform from which to advocate an agenda. So the president will use their role as the head of the executive branch, maybe in a speech or some way, to advocate, push an agenda, and this is known as the bully pulpit. Whips are party leaders within each House of Congress. They're trying to get the opinions of the members, trying to convince to vote one way or the other. Your minority leader is just that leader within one of your houses that is not of the majority party. Powers of Congress, some powers listed there: impeachment, approve treaties, write legislation, approve appointments, declare war, and one of the most important is to pass a federal budget. Now, looking at different checks on different branches. So if you were to check on the Congress as the executive branch, you could veto a bill. If you were the Supreme Court and you're checking on Congress, you could declare bills unconstitutional. Different checks on the Supreme Court. If you're Congress, you can confirm all the confirmations to the Supreme Court, impeach judges if it gets to that point, and then you could pass legislation that limits a Supreme Court decision. If you're the executive branch, you can limit decisions by passing executive orders, refusing to enforce the decision, and the other way you have a check on the Supreme Court is nominating judges. Different checks on the president of the executive branch. You can, as Congress, you can override a veto that was made by the president. You can impeach the president, and you approve of all nominations. And the Supreme Court can check on the executive branch by declaring acts that the president is doing unconstitutional. And then on the federal bureaucracy, so part of the executive branch, but the bureaucracy themselves, those departments within the executive branch, Congress has the power to check on them by controlling the money, funding all the departments, eliminating the departments, and calling individuals to testify at congressional hearings. One of your required documents was Federal 70. It deals with the executive branch and talks about needing a strong leader so that decisions can be made quickly. Pork barrel legislation, the idea that individuals in Congress will try to fund projects that will just be for their local constituents to kind of show them that they are doing something for them. Roe v. Wade sought to terminate, in the background, again, Roe was trying to terminate a pregnancy. Texas law prohibited this. However, the Supreme Court said that a woman's right to abortion was within the right to privacy protected by the 14th Amendment. So 4th and 14th Amendment there. Different powers of the president. Some of the formal powers written in the Constitution: negotiate treaties, appoint judges, ambassadors. It is he or she is the commander-in-chief and can approve all legislation by Congress. Informal things that he or she can do that is not directly written in the Constitution are issue executive orders, meet with world leaders, has access to the media, can also write signing statements. So signing statements are accepting a bill but protesting it, just kind of discussing why he or she does not like the bill. And then one model of how a congressperson can represent, use the trustee model. So legislators are considering what the people like, but also act in ways that would be best for the nation in the long term. All right, Unit 3, your civil liberties and civil rights. The Voting Rights Act of 65 prohibits racial discrimination in voting practices. This helped promote things like African American politicians to be elected, and also people actually going to the polls. Supreme Court case Tinker versus Des Moines, students wearing those armbands to protest, talking about the Vietnam War. The principals then decided to create a policy that banned those and asked to remove. If they did not, they were suspended. So went to the Supreme Court, and they said that the armbands were pure speech and it was protected. They said they don't fully lose their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech when they step onto school property. The issue here was that did it disrupt, interfere with the operation of school, and that did not. So looking at the First Amendment then, we have the idea of speech. Speech cannot threaten national security or be obscene. A lot of symbolic speech is protected, like burning the flag. And you have freedom of religion. They have the Establishment Clause. Prohibits government from making any laws respecting religion, and the exercise cannot prohibit you from engaging in any religious activity. Then there's the freedom of press, no prior restraints, so they can't stop things from going out, but it can be limited if it presents a clear and present danger. And the biggest thing to know, again, for your amendments, selective incorporation, some liberties listed in the Bill of Rights have been applied to the states. They use that Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to do so. Unit 4, looking at different responses to different things by liberals or conservatives. One of the responses you should know, liberal response to a funding shortage would be an example. Liberals always want to increase in government spending for more programs, which then hopefully would help and target local communities, poorer communities, which will help provide greater resources to local governments. An exit poll, when individuals go to vote, and then people sit outside the polling places and ask them who they voted for, so it's trying to predict the results. When you look at libertarian politics, they want fewer taxes, less government intrusion. Your political socialization is your background traits and how they influence your political views. Number 1 there is your family. When looking at a public opinion poll, you want the sample to be random. You need a large enough sample size, margin of error around 3, hopefully below 5, and you don't want any questions that would be misleading. All right, your last unit here, your Electoral College, determines the presidential winner. One of the things that some people argue is that the smaller states have more of an influence on the election, um, looking at their per vote for population. So the percentage there, the less population, they say that the people have their vote counts more than in a larger state. The 24th Amendment prohibits poll taxes, got rid of poll taxes. Retrospective, so in the past, what has the candidate done in the past to help? And I'm going to vote based on that because I like what they've done, so that person maybe will be reelected. The difference between political parties and interest groups. Political parties are trying to connect people to their platform. The biggest goal is for them to win elections and then control the government, whereas interest groups are pressuring Congress, informing on different issues, donating money, and trying to influence public policy. And that is it. Good luck.